The left wasn't as crazy under Bush and Obama. They just weren't. And I was not going to hold my tongue when they went to places where, I mean, you know, college kids marching for Hamas. Don't tell me there hasn't been a change.
Right.
And the victim culture, the cancel culture, she's not part of what they suspect she might be, sort of a stealth version of the worst excesses of the left. I said there's a coalition of Trump voters, people who really like him. They certainly are those. And then there's people who don't necessarily like him that much, but they still think he's less crazy.
You'd think after the trouble MSNBC's been through lately, they'd ease up a bit on the double standards. But nope, they didn't just keep going, they cranked it up even more. Their focus on pushing Trump out has made them blind to how unfair and one-sided they've become. Enter Bill Maher. He's not holding back. He's calling out their fake outrage with sharp, no-nonsense honesty. No filter, no mercy. And we've got all the proof you need. Get ready, because this is about to get intense. Maher's newest target, MSNBC's Joe Scarborough. Scarborough tried and failed to lure Maher into attacking the Republican Party. But Maher didn't fall for it. Instead, he flipped the conversation and went straight after Scarborough and the Democratic National Committee in one smart, cutting response. Check it out.
So much. How long have we
After all
been doing this? And I'm serious. What has it been?
I don't know. Well, you were on Politically Incorrect, right? That was the 90s when you were a congressman from Florida.
The 90s, exactly. And first show I was on, this guy stands up and points at me. He goes, "You're a racist."
Who's that? Who was it?
I forget who it was. And then you defended
me. Did he mean it?
Of course he meant it. But
well, he's a comedian.
I was from the South. He's a comedian. I wasn't insulted by it. I bet you stood up for me.
Well, that is a fundamental problem we've had for a long time.
Right.
Well, two problems. One, there are racists in the Republican Party, as many people have. Well, I mean, there always have been. There used to be more in the Democratic Party. They were the Dixiecrat. But as someone once said, you know, is every Republican a racist? Of course not. But if you're a racist, that is the party you're going to gravitate toward. But also there is a big problem of calling every Republican a racist and calling everything racism.
If you're not up to speed, here's the backstory. Joe Scarborough, yeah, that's Scarborough, used to be a Republican congressman. But over time, he shifted toward the left, and now stands firmly in their camp, even if he won't say it outright. In the clip you just saw, Scarborough tried to push the conversation toward a familiar claim, accusing the GOP of racism. But Maher wasn't buying it. He flipped the script and called out the Democrats for their own issues with racial hypocrisy. That's when Joe started to get uncomfortable. But Maher? He stayed cool and didn't back down. In fact, he went even harder.
Wasn't as crazy under Bush and Obama. They just weren't. And I was not going to hold my tongue.
Maher was just getting started, and Scarborough was clearly getting uncomfortable, almost like you could hear the panic building in his mind. This wasn't the conversation he expected. Scarborough probably thought Maher was still the same guy from years ago, the one who would lose it the moment Republicans came up. But Maher's changed. He's sharper, more independent, and isn't afraid to call out both sides of the political mess. That's what made Scarborough so uneasy. You could tell by his body language, shifting in his seat, smirking, trying to find some kind of moral high ground that just wasn't there. Maher broke the usual script and made one thing clear. He's nobody's
around the world that have territorial disputes, it doesn't go on forever.
It was clear as day. Scarborough was getting uneasy as the conversation touched on things he wasn't ready to defend, so like clockwork, he switched gears. This time, he brought up anti-Semitism and colonialism, classic distractions to avoid the real issue. And that's the problem. Whenever the left gets called out, the usual moves kick in. Dodge, deflect, change the subject, or move the goalposts. But let's be honest, anti-Semitism didn't just
Israel for the entire time here, but I want to get back to you haven't changed. So you consider yourself a liberal, right?
I consider myself an old school liberal. You have to make that distinction now, because the word woke, which started out as a good thing, being alert to injustice, and a lot of people get triggered by the word because when they hear it, they think of it the old meaning, which was good.
Right.
Stay woke. But I'm sorry, language is a living, breathing entity. Words change and they migrate and they take on a different meaning. And woke now has to answer for people have just used the word to ascribe a number of extreme things on the...
Joe Scarborough just couldn't catch a break that day. His usual tactics didn't work at all. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't get Bill Maher to bite and launch into a typical attack on Republicans. Every time Scarborough tried to steer the talk toward easy Republican bashing, it completely backfired. Instead, Maher flipped the script and put the spotlight on the left and their loyal media allies, tearing apart the very ideas Scarborough now supports. The whole woke culture. And Maher wasn't subtle about it. He was relentless, precise, and didn't hold back one bit. By then, it was painfully clear Scarborough was cornered. The seasoned journalist, with decades of experience, looked like a man realizing the conversation had spun way out of his control. You could almost see him searching for a way out, grasping for some lifeline to get back to safer ground. But there was no escape. Maher had taken full control of the moment. And Scarborough? He was just along for the ride. Scarborough wasn't the only one in Maher's crosshairs that night. Another target was Kamala Harris.
I was talking about it in the editorial tonight. Kamala's big, challenge here to win over the undecided voters is to convince them that she's not part of what they suspect she might be, sort of a stealth version of the worst excesses of the left. I said there's a coalition of Trump voters, people who really like him. They certainly are those. And then there's people who don't necessarily like him that much, but they still think he's less crazy than stuff that strikes them as aggressively anti-common sense. That takes place on the left.
Unfortunately, for Kamala Harris, no matter how much she tried, she couldn't shake the strong association with wokeness. Everything about her, from her policies to her speeches and even her carefully planned interviews, sent the same message. She was deep inside the progressive bubble. Whether it was identity politics, selective outrage, or focusing more on virtue. Signaling, then, real solutions, Harris made it clear she wasn't just connected to the woke movement, she was one of its biggest voices. But that came with a price. Voters saw right through the act. They weren't buying the polished sound bites or the empty calls for social justice. People wanted real answers and strong leadership, not another speech about pronouns or quotas. Harris's failure to step away from that ideology didn't just hurt her chances, it dragged down the entire Democratic Party. Last year's election. Losses weren't just about politics. They were a serious wake-up call. Americans are tired of purity tests and performative politics. And Harris? She became the perfect example of what voters are rejecting. By now, Scarborough was really feeling the pressure. So, once again, he tried to change the subject.
It's very easy to say, yeah, I said that in 2019. I was in a competitive thing. Now, she did say, I think she said this was the law under Trump, too. He didn't change it. But it's very easy to say, I don't believe that anymore. And on that issue, she should. I wanted to ask you, so you're an old line liberal.
I think so.
I'm an old line conservative. I still believe in the balanced budgets, a strong southern border, a tough reaction to military aggression from Russia, et cetera, et cetera. And yet you and I find ourselves, I think, more in the same place because of the extremes on both sides. Talk about how crazy things have gotten and how we got here.
Well, that's it. I feel like I speak for a different group of people. You ask why the audience is different. That's why. Because I want a group of people who are not ideologically captured by either side.
I'm so tired of the extremes, and I'm not alone. It's time we put the country first, not party loyalty or endless political drama. Imagine an America where common sense wins over blind ideology, where decisions are based on what actually works, not what gets cheers from Twitter mobs or cable news talking heads. We need citizens who aren't trapped by either side's agenda. Loyalty should be to principles, not people. It's time to hold every leader accountable, no matter their party. If your favorite candidate doesn't protect individual freedoms, support economic opportunity, or defend our national values, then it's on you to speak up. Call them out. Vote against them if needed. Blind loyalty only lets bad policies grow and corruption spread. Real patriotism means demanding more from every leader, even the ones you used to support. That's how we fix this country, not with slogans or tribal fights, but with clear thinking, responsibility, and the courage to stand on our own.
I'm tired of the extremes and the extremists who dominate the debate. They have the megaphone, and we hear them more, but I don't think they represent what most people in the country talk about. I think almost any issue, you could actually come up with a reasonable middle ground. In the overtime segment tonight, the subject of race and we were talking about young men who are now like in college, the ones who are going to need affirmative action. You have to, on the one hand, understand you benefited from racism if you're white. There's no doubt about it. And that has to be addressed. It can't be ignored.
Right.
But also, I didn't personally do it. There's a middle ground there. It's very...
That's exactly why so many people respect Bill Maher, because he says what he thinks, plain and simple. No sugarcoating, no party lines or rehearsed talking points. Just honest, straight talk. In a world where most voices are either shouting from the far left or screaming from the far right, Maher isn't afraid to stand in the middle, even when it's uncomfortable or unpopular. The truth is, most issues have a middle ground, a place where common sense, practicality, and respect can live together. Sure, Maher admits some things are clear-cut, black and white, but more often than not, it's easier for people to just pick a side than to think deeply and honestly. If we commit to finding that middle ground through open conversations, open minds, and challenging our own biases, we can get there. It won't always be easy. It might even be uncomfortable, but that's where real progress happens. The middle isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And in today's messy politics, voices like Maher's remind us that thinking for ourselves is the most rebellious thing we can do. That wraps up today's video. If you liked it, hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.